Alright, so the Module 11 test is going to be all about systems of equations and how to solve systems of equations, the different strategies that we used throughout the last 2 weeks, such as solving systems of equations by graphing, solving systems of equations by substitution, and solving systems of equations by elimination. Let's first take a look at solving systems of equations by graphing, and let's review this. As always, please try to complete this study guide beforehand and then watch the video. Okay, so number one, we're solving this system by graphing. So because we're solving it by graphing, the easiest way to graph would be to change both of these to slope-intercept form. All right, and if you remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So let's take the first equation, which I'll do in blue. If we're solving this system by graphing, I'm first going to want to change this equation to slope-intercept form, which would mean that I would need to solve for y. How would I solve for y on this equation? All I would have to do is subtract by x on both sides. And if I do that, y would be by itself. It would be y equals negative x plus 3. Bottom equation, I'll do in red. That's 3x plus 2y equals 14. And to solve for y, I would have to subtract by 3x first on both sides. And if I do that, I get 2y equals negative 3x plus 14. We still have that 2 attached to the y, so our last step would be to divide both sides of our equation by 2. And if I do that, I get y equals negative 3 halves x plus 7. And there we have both of our equations. Now we go ahead and graph. Remember, when you're solving systems of equations by graphing, you want to make sure your graphs and your lines are as straight and accurate as possible. So for my first line, the one that I will do in blue, my y-intercept is 3, which means I'm going to start at this point right here. And then my slope is negative 1 over 1. So I'm going to go down 1 to the right one, down 1 to the right one, down 1 to the right one. And I'm going to plot as many points as I can. This is a fairly simple slope. So I'm just going to go all the way up and down my coordinate plane. So remember, we could also, instead of going down 1 to the right one, we could go up 1 and to the left 1, and that would be the same thing. And then try to draw as straight a line as possible. And there's my blue line. For my red line, my slope is negative 3 halves, and my y-intercept is 7. So I'm going to go up 7, and that would be my y-intercept. All right, my slope is negative 3 halves, which means I would go down 3 to the right 2. 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 And I could already tell what my intersection point is going to be. It's going to be right here, because I just went over one of my other points from my other graph. And I'm going to go down 3. I'll still do a couple more points here, and I can also go up 3 and to the left 2 as well. Then draw as straight of a line as possible. And if you do that, you'd see that they intersect at this point right here. So one solution, and our solution looks like is going to be negative 8. I'm sorry, not negative 8, positive 8, negative 6. That's not negative 6, I'm sorry, that's negative 5. Positive 8 comma negative 5. All right, so we're solving this system by graphing again. The bottom one, which I'll do in blue, is just x equals 4. So we could already graph that if we wanted to. We know that when it's x equals a number, it's going to be a vertical line at that number. So this number happens to be 4, which would be right here. So all we would do is draw a vertical line on 4, just like that. And that would be x equals 4. Remember, x equals a number would be a vertical line. Y equals a number would be a horizontal line. Now for my top equation, which I'll do in red, we would need to change this to slope-intercept form first. which is, if you recall from the last problem, y equals mx plus b. So we'd have to solve for y, which means we need to get rid of the x first. And this would leave us with 2y equals negative x plus 6. Not done yet because y is still not by itself. We would need to divide both sides of this equation by 2. And if we do that, we get y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. So our y-intercept is 3, which is right here. And it looks like our slope is negative 1/2. So we're going to go down 1 to the right 2, down 1 to the right 2. And I bet you could already see what our answer is going to be. Oops, I was supposed to go down 1 to the right 2. I bet you could already see what our answer is going to be. You could probably already see where this is going to intersect, where these two lines are going to intersect. Not the straightest line, I'm sorry, but it looks like they're going to intersect at that point right there, which that point is 4, 1. So the answer is going to be 4, 1. Also remember, if you graph, for your test tomorrow, if you graph two lines and they are parallel, like this, that would mean that there would be no solutions. And if you graph two lines that happen to be the same line, like this, that would mean that there would be an infinite amount of solutions because those are right on top of each other. Now we're going to solve each system algebraically, and we're going to use the substitution method, which is the method that you all preferred the least over this week. So remember, we have 3 steps when we're solving systems of equations using substitutions. One, you want to solve one of the equations for either x or y. Well, luckily for us, this first equation is already solved for y. Next, we are going to substitute that first equation into the second equation. So anywhere I see a y in that second equation, 4x minus 3, and then I see a y. So anywhere I see a y, I'm going to be plugging in this, 7x plus 6. And that way, we are only dealing with x's. We don't have any y's. So we could actually solve for x because we don't have y. And that's all going to equal 16. We distribute. Remember, there's a negative in front of that 3. That would be 4x minus 21x minus 18 equals 16. Combine like terms. That would give me negative 17x minus 18 equals 16. And then our last step is to add 18 on both sides. And if we do that, we get negative 17x equals 34. We divide by negative 17 on both sides. And that would leave us with x equals negative 2. But remember, we need an ordered pair. We need to see where these two intersect. Where these two lines intersect. We have our x, which is negative 2. In order to find our y, we just need to take this point here, or this number here, and plug it in for x into one of our original equations. The easiest original equation to use would be that first one. So in that first equation, anywhere you see an x, you would just plug in negative 2. So 7 times negative 2 plus 6. Well, 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. And negative 14 plus 6 is negative 8. So where do these two lines intersect? It would be at negative 2, negative 8, and that's it. Another one, solve by substitution. This time we don't have, one of our equations isn't already solved for x or y, so that means we'll have to solve for x or y. It looks like the first equation is the easiest one to manipulate because we could easily solve for x by moving the 7y to the other side. So x minus 7y equals negative 21. All we would have to do is add 7y. So that would just give us x equals 7y minus 21. And now we could plug this into our second equation, anywhere we see an x. So this would be 2 times 7y minus 21 minus 14y equals negative 42. Distribute. 2 times 7y is 14y. 2 times negative 21 is negative 42. And then we have minus 14y and that equals negative 42. If you notice, the 14y's are going to cancel. That means we're going to just be left with two numbers. So remember, if you're just left with two numbers, whoops, I meant to change it back to a pen. If you're just left with two numbers, you have one of two possible outcomes. It means either that you have no solutions, which would mean that you have parallel lines, or you have an infinite amount of solutions, which means you had the same line on top of each other. Okay? In this case, the two numbers do in fact equal each other. Negative 42 does equal negative 42, which would tell me that we have the same line, so we have an infinite amount of solutions. That would be your answer. Okay, next, so substitution. It looks like the easiest equation to solve for a variable would be that second equation. Okay, and I'll go ahead and do that in red. So we have x minus 4y equals 12. You're going to want to solve for x, right? Because that's the one that has a coefficient of 1. So we'd add 4y on both sides. And that would leave us with x equals 4y plus 12. Now we take this, plug it into the first equation. And if we do that, we would get 3, and instead of x, we'd write in 4y plus 12 equals, minus 5y equals 15. Use the distributive property, and that would leave you with 12y plus 36 minus 5y equals 15. Combine like terms, and that would leave you with 7y plus 36 equals 15. Subtract both sides by 36, and that would leave you with 7y equals negative 21. Divide by 7 on both sides, and you would get your answer, or at least the y component of your answer, which is y equals negative 3. All right. Now, we need to find our x. So what do? We take y equals negative 3 and plug it into our revised equation. And I'll do that on the side here because I ran out of space. And if we do that, we get x equals 4 times negative 3 plus 12. Well, 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And negative 12 plus 12 is 0. So your answer would be, or your ordered pair would be 0, negative 3. And the last one has this junk over it. Let me see if I can move it. There we go. So number 6, we have y equals negative 5. And 8x plus 5y equals negative 16. So luckily this is already solved for y. Anywhere we see a y, we're going to plug in negative 5. And that'll give us our x. So it would be 8x plus 5 times negative 5 equals negative 17. It'd be 8x minus 25 equals negative 17. You add 25 on both sides, and if you do that, you get 8x equals 8, which after we divide by 8, that'll give us x equals 1. Now in this one, we don't have to take 1 and plug it into one of our original equations, right? Because we already know what y equals. Y equals negative 5. So your ordered pair is just simply going to be 1, negative 5. Next, solve using elimination. So when we're solving using elimination, we're going to either add or subtract. So the first equation, remember our variables need to be lined up, which luckily they are. Okay, and it looks like we're going to want to get rid of these x's. Now how would we do that? Well, x plus x would be 2x, right? So that would mean that we'd have to subtract. So our first equation is still going to be x minus y equals negative 10. But our bottom equation would now be negative x. Remember, you're distributing that negative to everything inside. So instead of minus 6y, it'd be plus 6y. And that'll equal, instead of negative 25, that'll be positive 25. And there you have it. The x's are going to cancel out. 6y minus y is 5y, and negative 10 plus 25 is 15. The last step would be to divide by 5, and if you do that, you'd end up with y equals 3. Now you just take this, plug it into one of your originals, I'll plug it into the first. So that would be x minus 3 equals negative 10. If we add 3 on both sides, that'll give you your answer, which is x equals negative 7. So what is the ordered pair? The ordered pair is going to be negative 7 comma 3. Number 8, it looks like we're just going to add them because the two y's are already going to cancel out. So these two y's are going to be gone, and we're going to be left with 8 plus 2 is 10. 10x equals, then 28 plus 22 would be 50. Divide by 10 on both sides. If you do that, you get x equals 5. And what you want to do next is find your y by plugging in that x into any one of those first two equations. So that would be 2 times, and instead of, I'm using the first equation, instead of x, we'll put in a 5, plus 2y equals 28. 2 times 5 is 10. We'd subtract by 10 on both sides. That'll leave us with 2y equals 18. Divide by 2, and you'd get your answer, which the ordered pair would be 5, 9. 2 more to go. I know this has been a long video. So for number 9, we have 3x plus 6y equals 27, and x plus 2y equals 11. So there's one where we're going to have to multiply either the top or the bottom equation. Looks like it'll be easiest to multiply the bottom equation, and it'd be easiest to multiply, well, actually I'm going to multiply it by negative 3. You could have also multiplied it by, oh no, actually negative 3 would be the only thing you can multiply it by, and you'll see what happens in a moment. So the top equation is still going to be 3x plus 6y equals 27, and then that bottom equation, when we multiply everything by negative 3, would be negative 3x minus 6y equals negative 33. So this one, both of our variables are going to cancel out, and we're going to be left with 0 equals negative 6. So does 0 actually equal negative 6? No. So that would mean that we'd have absolutely no solutions. That would mean that the two lines are going to be parallel. So number 10, it looks like we'll have to multiply the top and the bottom. I'm going to multiply the top by 3. And I'm going to multiply the bottom by 5. Now, if you notice, this is already a positive and a negative, so that's why both of the numbers I'm multiplying by are positive, right? Because I don't need to change any of the signs. If I multiply the top equation by 3, that would be 12x plus 15y equals 66. If I multiply the bottom equation by 5, that would be 35x minus 15y equals negative 160. So the y's cancel out. Perfect. 12x plus 35x is going to be 47x. And then 66 minus 160 is going to be negative 94. All right, your last step is to divide both sides by 47. And if you do that, you would get x equals negative 2. How would you figure out your y? You would just take this x and plug it into one of your top equations. I'll plug it into the first one. That'd be 4 times negative 2 plus 5y equals 22. It's negative 8 plus 5y equals 22. Add 8 on both sides. You get 5y equals 30. Divide by 5 on both sides, and you get y equals 6. That would be your answer, y equals 6. So the ordered pair would be negative 2, comma 6. Negative 2, comma 6. And that is it for the study guide. Your test will be tomorrow. Good luck on your test. Study tonight. Study tonight. Make sure you pass this test. It's going to be one of your last tests before the winter break. I will see you tomorrow.